Hello everyone, I'm an alcoholic and my name is Daniel. Okay, really nervous about this. Not about delivering the message, but getting beyond myself and giving back to the program. So without delay, I will start rambling and then let God take over. As of today, I have 1,785 days of continuous sobriety. And I don't say that out of pride. I say that for the newcomers that are coming into the program, that it works. It works if we work it. It is by God's grace and God's grace alone that I have that. Before coming into the program, I woke up in the hospital and I didn't know where I was at, I didn't know how I got there, and I didn't know what had happened. 45 days after that, I met a guy in the program, and he put me to work, but I was not employable. I rambled, spent a lot of time with him. He was renovating some houses, and I rambled a lot. Every now and again, he would pipe in that I was doing some morbid reflecting, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And I'd express a lot of resentments, a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness toward family and friends and loved ones. And then every once in a while, he'd say, "There's a page in the back of the big book. It's about acceptance," and he would suggest me to read it. And needless to say, I didn't take any of his suggestions, and I pretty much balked the program for quite a while, and I drank again. I came back in and picked up a white chip. January 23rd. Okay, and I can't remember the year, 2008? 9? Thank you. 2009. I brought with me quite a group of moral support. They're keeping me on my toes. The group over here is going to stand if I lie, which they should be standing right now because I'm moving my lips. So, I'm really glad y'all came. AA has become my family. A friend called me a couple days ago and asked me what I was going to be doing for the holidays. Asked me if I was going to be spending it with my family. And my thinking was, well, yeah, but she was referring to immediate family, relatives. I was like, I don't get along with them. My son hasn't talked with me in 7 years. He's pretty pissed off at me. But that's okay today. That is okay today. I got to talk with him for about 3 hours a few years ago after coming into the program. And I've got a lot of amends in that area to make. And I will. One day at a time, I will do that. And for that, I'm grateful. Today, I have a choice. And when I was drinking, I didn't have a choice. I didn't have that choice to not drink. Had to. Today, I don't have to drink because this program gives me that choice. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to have that choice today. – 2009. Wow. That's quite something. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. I applied the principles. And that's a bunch of days. 1,785. That's quite something. It's the most sobriety that I've had in my life in years. Started drinking at an early age. Started drinking anytime my grandfather would set his beer down. my cousin and I would run over to the table and we'd finish off the suds. And dry goods are a part of my story. Started using dry goods when I was about 6 years old. Grew up around a lot of things. My mother had a green thumb. I kind of picked up on that at an early age. And I have one as well. By God's grace, I've never been in trouble with the law, with the exception of losing my license for being under the age and being behind the wheel of a motor vehicle after drinking at the age of 17. And having been pulled over seven other times after that. But I always flew under the radar. Always. In high school, I'd climb out the window and I'd take off till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Then I'd come home and get up and go to school. Got really good grades. My teachers, never had any problems at school. I'd sleep in classes and teachers would wake me up and ask me questions and I'd be able to snap off the answers, and she couldn't figure it out. But then the second year in that class, it was a language class, it was Spanish. I picked up on it. Second year we were supposed to speak nothing but Spanish, and about 4 days into that class I walked out. I was like, I'm going to drop this class, get another one. So I took art and auto mechanics, things that didn't require a lot of effort but got really good grades. Graduated from high school, joined the military. Served in the military for about 8 years. 1 year of full-time active service, and I quit. I gave up on myself and I walked away from a goal that I had been planning for since I was 12. Jumping out of planes and playing Army. That's what I did. And I was good at it. But I quit myself and walked away from it. Moved back to Stanley County and commenced to tying it on. Got a job when I got back to Stanley County and worked in one of the mobile home manufacturers. There were 7 in the county at one time, and I think I've worked in 3 or 4 of them. To the point of I got pissed off at them, and I walked out. Told them if they wasn't going to give me the job that I wanted, that I wasn't going to work anymore. So I walked out and left and went to the sales center for the manufacturer and started setting their houses for them. So not only did I build them, I left and started putting them together for them. And did that for probably about 3 years. It went really well. Was in business with family and pretty much let my family run it into the ground. I played a victim at everything that I did. Let me back up a minute and say this. The first time that I walked into the meetings, into the rooms of AA, I walked in and there were 3 guys at the hut, and 2 of them were making coffee and one of them was standing at the podium. And the guy walked over and introduced himself, shook my hand and introduced himself. And the first thing he said to me was, don't compare yourself to others, but look for the similarities. And only my higher power knew how I compared my life to my family, my classmates, to everybody. I played the victim, and I made all those comparisons to where it was everybody else's fault for the things that were going wrong in my life. When I got into the rooms, I was living out of a storage building. Had all my personal effects in a storage building. I was going through civil custody and was fighting against my family, myself, the community, all of that. Stood in front of the judge and she told me that I had to do counseling, parenting classes, counseling, a list of things. And I did. I left and I did all that. Left that courthouse and For 1 year, I did everything that they asked, and then got scheduled to go back in front of the judge again. And when I went to counseling, the counselor, as soon as she came into the room, I was like, well, what exactly are we supposed to accomplish? What is this counseling supposed to do? I was like, if I have an understanding of what's expected of me, I'll do it to the best of my ability. And I finished those counseling sessions, went back in front of the judge, and that counselor wrote about 2 or 3 pages about how manipulative and how controlling I was trying to be of the situation. And the irony of that is, about 2 years into the program, my sponsor took me to an out-of-town meeting in Harrisburg. And as soon as I walked into that meeting, I met that counselor. She was there. And I was like, that's kind of ironic. It was by no means a coincidence whatsoever. Everything was with purpose, I truly believe. And she knew, before I even had an understanding of my thinking and of what I consider my best thinking, what brought me to my bottom. She knew. The judge read off that paper and had a few choice things to say, and of course I made an ass of myself, told her what I thought about her and that counselor and everything else. And I walked out of that courthouse and I started drinking heavily, more heavily than I had ever done in quite some time. I was going to ruin my life. I was going to show them I will. That brought me to living out of that storage building and everything. And meeting a very close friend, closer to me than my own family. He's given me a lot of guidance and direction. He handed me my first big book and told me to read the first 164 pages. And I was living out of the building. In the house we were renovating, there was a building in the backyard, and I had a hammock, and I was staying in that building and helping him renovate. I read that first 164 pages, I gave it back to him and didn't remember any of it. None of it sunk in, none of it made any sense. That was early sobriety. I was pretty much dry drunk, wasn't drinking. When I finally got serious and picked up my second white chip, got a sponsor, I started applying the principles as they were laid out. They started making sense to me. But only, we get out of this program what we put into it, and I didn't, like school, I didn't put a lot of effort into it. Did not put a lot of effort into it. Grasped the concepts, understood the principles, but didn't put a lot of effort whatsoever into it. Went through the steps with my sponsor, and after about, I guess it was about 3 years of sobriety, I was still an emotional wreck. This is about two years ago. I started praying about God helping me to help him to help me. It was very selfish, but it's like those foxhole prayers. God help me. And some things started happening in my life. A close friend started asking me to attend some big book step studies, and I was working. God had made me employable. And I did what I always do. I worked my ass off and I put everything that I made into the bank, and then I got an attitude with my supervisor. Don't they know who I am? Why are they treating me this way? They do for everybody. Anyway, I got all that and more spinning in my head. And I knew I wanted to go to those meetings, and I knew that God had put those meetings in front of me for a reason. And I started attending those meetings a few months ago and started applying the steps as they're laid out in the big book. And it's really worthwhile. If any of you have heard of the big book step studies, they're really worthwhile. I'm grateful for that being a part of my life. I know that with structure, I do really well. When I know what's set before me and I know what goals that I'm working toward, there's that strong will of the alcoholic that I am. I can accomplish anything that I set my mind to. A lot of times it scares the shit out of me, but that's okay. It's facing all those fears that makes a difference in my life. This program has allowed me the opportunity of finishing. I tried twice while working for this company. Tried twice going through this EMT program at the local community college and could not accomplish it. The work schedule and making meetings, I kept dropping that class. Well, I finally got that accomplished and passed the state certifications on the 6th of September. And the paramedic course starts in April of 2014. And in the meantime of that, I enrolled in the biomed program at the local community college. You know, it's amazing what we can accomplish when we put our nose to the stone. It really is amazing. I wouldn't be able to have what I have in my life were it not for this program. It is because of this program and a God of my understanding that I can put my foot forward and keep my nose to the stone. I want to say that in the process of all this past 2 years, I've had an opportunity of working with others in such a way that it's brought a better understanding of my isms, my selfishness and my self-centeredness. And it's helped me recognize a lot of my old behaviors. I was standing in the driveway of my house. Went from living in a storage building to actually having a place. But in the process of all that, I actually tried to make some amends to my mother, and actually moved in and started paying her bills for her for 2 years. And it got crazy. I ended up putting my hand through a wall. But it's okay. It's really okay. She and I get along. We get along a lot better today than we have in a long time. But I do know this: I can't be around her for more than 20 or 30 minutes. I can do for her without expectation. I can do for her for no good reason. Just to be a son. I'm actually talking to my siblings more, and that's good. I don't mean to be jumping around so much, but it's kind of how my thinking is. Was saying, I was standing in my driveway, and some things were happening. I picked up the phone and I called my sponsor, and he done what he always does. When I call him during the day, he's usually busy, and he tells me that he's busy and he'll call me back. And when he says that he'll call me back, it's usually, I'll talk to you in about 3 days. and he lets me sit on everything that I'm dealing with. And that worked up until I started attending these big book step studies. I had to get another sponsor, and I still talk with my first sponsor. But it was when he hung up on me. He hung up the phone, and see, in my best thinking, he hung up on me. He told me that he had to go and that he would call me back, and then he hung up. And of course, my best thinking is he's hanging up on me. Yeah. So when he hung up, the first thing that I asked myself is like, what is the lesson in this for me? And I sat down and I started praying. The prayer thing, it works. It really works. I think it was in my first year of sobriety. There was an old timer who's since passed away. He used to sit at the tables, Bill Smith. And Bill will say, well, God will move mountains, but he expects us to bring shovels. And it used to piss me off. I get so mad at him. And I'd tell him. And he had a stoma, and he'd put his finger over his hole in a raspy voice. He didn't mind being honest. And he'd tell you exactly what you needed to hear. He gave new meaning to the term rigorous honesty. I started applying that acceptance thing in the book and started praying for him. And this was early on. I was walking to meetings, probably about 4 or 5 miles from where I was staying, in storage buildings on 2427 in Albemarle. By the time I get to the first bridge, I was so pissed off. By the time I get to the second bridge, after the first bridge, I'd start praying for the people. And by the time I get to the second bridge, I was like, my higher power could be so pissed off at me for the same things that I'm pissed off at everybody else for. And then I keep praying. And by the time I get to the meetings, my bitterness and my anger and all that, it was gone. The power of prayer, changing bitterness and anger to serenity and peace. That is an amazing thing. Practicing those lessons, praying for Bill. I found 5 spoons laying on the side of the road. How's that, Mark? I picked those spoons up. I was salvaging metals, aluminum cans, and anything that I could find before I got into the program and during early recovery. I found those spoons and I put them in my backpack, and God laid it on my heart. Well, they're small, but they're shovels nonetheless. I share that to say that going through this big book study process is about using those spoons. It's about moving those mountains. It's about my desire to have a fuller understanding of a conscious contact with my higher power. Whoever or whatever that higher power is, I have had so many selfish prayers answered. I've gotten everything that I've ever prayed for and ever wanted in my life, but only once in my life have I ever known what it was like to have the things that I needed and to actually pray and to ask for my needs before anything else. And that's when the understanding of the principles of this program started weighing on my heart. And I'm grateful for that. Truly grateful. Today, I have a choice to live a life of principles and values. A friend came into the program a little over a year ago, and when they came in, I talked with that sponsor of mine that would hang up on me. I was like, this is where I'm at with this. And he's like, okay, well, make a decision of the type of person you want to be. I was like, okay, I want to be this type of person. And he's like, okay, well, you need to make choices and decisions that bring about you becoming that type of person. And before he told me that, another friend sitting in this meeting, he watched me go through some self-will. And I went to him one day and I was like, I'm struggling with something. And he's like, okay, well, come inside and we'll talk. We walked into the hut and honest to goodness, it was like he was following me around or was in my pocket or something. He started telling me everything that I was going through and all the things that I was dealing with. And he's like, you gotta learn to treat people like they're people. Learn how to respect them for who they are. Learn how to love them for who they are. He was beginning to teach me about the love and tolerance of this program, of others. And that's one of those principles that when we apply it in our lives, it doesn't matter what our parents do, or what our kids do, or what our friends or family, it doesn't matter what anybody else does. Because we realize that the lessons, the life lessons, are there for us all if we choose to put the principles to work in our lives. I took the steps. First time I read through them, completely through them. Didn't grasp them or anything. But then I took them. And I apply them daily. Not as well as I could, though. Not as well as I could, because it is my character to kind of coast and go under the radar and just kind of do the bare minimum of what I've got to do. And that's changed today. Today it's about seeing it for what it is and applying just a little more effort. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And then we have 12 and 12. The third step in the 12 and 12, the sponsor told me that anything that's in bold or italicized letters, back then when they had first printed those, it cost them. So it was important. And the first word in the 12 and 12 on step 3 is practicing. I'd say for the first 2.5 years, I came in and read the 24 hours and the daily reflections and the meditations, but I didn't practice them. But it was that repetition. It was that constant repetition of hearing these principles that's changing my life. Filling my heart with the desire to actually have them in my life instead of just reading them. And for almost a year now, I've been getting up and reading those meditations daily. Whereas when in early sobriety, I was reading them when I'd get to the meeting. And then I'd hear people talking about praying and thanking God in the mornings or asking Him to keep me sober in the mornings and thanking Him in the evening. And I was like, I should try that. That could keep me sober. And I did. But it took a while. It's not... Let me back up and say this. Had the opportunity of doing some landscaping around the hut. And I would get out there and I would work on that landscaping, and I had to reach out and had to ask others for the help to get it accomplished. And while I was out there digging in the dirt, putting in the landscaping fabric and the landscaping brick and all that jazz, my best thinking kept telling me it was never good enough. I wasn't out there 8 hours a day, 5 days, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. I wasn't out there 10 hours, wasn't out there 12 hours. And then I got this serene understanding that I had been out there every Saturday that I possibly had time and wasn't scheduled to work at the job where I was previously employed. I'd been out there every Saturday. But my best thinking never allowed me to see that for what it was. Never allowed that. I was still dealing and still deal with that destructive thinking that I brought into these rooms. Not good enough, less than, well, we're good enough. We're worth it today. Because of these principles, we are worth it today. I don't have to show anybody else. I don't have to ruin my life. I don't have to do any of those things that I was doing before I got to the doors of AA. However, and I say that hesitantly, I continue to do those things. But as I apply these principles in my life, my first sponsor, when I sat down and did my 5th step with him, he started showing me patterns of action and behaviors. He was making me aware. The principles of this program and my sponsor were making me aware of my actions and behaviors. And that brought about that moment of, what's the lesson in it for me? It was a moment of conscious awareness, a moment of clarity. That I'm responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA to be there, kind of moment. I wasn't a victim. It wasn't everybody else's fault. And there's no right or wrong decisions that I make today. They're simply decisions. And I can change those decisions as I go through my day. That job, I had gotten so pissed off one afternoon that while I was doing my job, I spent about 40 minutes praying the Serenity Prayer over and over and over. Sometimes it's like that. It's like I was working on myself today and reached out to another alcoholic and asked them if they would be a part of. And my head went so far out in left field simply because of asking. Brought about me going back into those old behaviors and old thinking processes of less than. I'd say about halfway here, I figured I didn't have anything worthwhile saying, and that it wouldn't take 20 or 25 minutes to express how important these principles are in my life and how grateful I am for them. And I spun on that for a few miles. 2 friends asked me if they would like for me to drive, or rather, they wanted to drive me here to the meeting. I was like, no way. Cannot let that happen. Because if I'm sitting in that passenger seat or anywhere else in the vehicle and not driving, my best thinking will definitely run the show. And in running that show, the committee is not what it once was. I can remember walking in to a meeting, somebody asked me how I was doing. I was like, I'm not angry, I'm not happy, I'm not sad, I'm not glad. And they looked at me and said, well, that's emotional stability. I was like, really? Is that what that is? Okay, how do I get more of that? I want more of that in my life. Little by little, day by day, moment by moment, we have that emotional stability if we choose to look for it and choose to work toward it. I have so many things happening in my life. In April, the paramedic course starts. I signed up at the community college for 18 credit hours. That's 6 more than a full-time student should. Full-time students like 12 credits. So I've signed up for 18. And in 10 months, from August to May of next year, in that 10-month span of time, I will earn a 2-year degree in 10 months. That's my sick thinking. I'll show them. And I will be working toward the paramedic course as well, the certifications for that. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I realize that I'm probably going to drop some of those classes. And it's not a bad thing. See, still dealing with that best thinking that I brought into the room. Had a vehicle that broke on me. Jay, my first sponsor, he kept telling me, quit buying shit that keeps breaking. I was like, okay, so I go and I bought a car that had a bad ring in it and it was burning oil. I was like, I'll drive it till it stops. And I did. About 2 or 3, it was Thanksgiving. It stopped running on Thanksgiving. And needless to say, I haven't checked to see what was what with it and why it stopped. But I was like, a friend of mine, before I bought that car, is like, go to the auto auction and buy a vehicle. And I was so damn scared of going to that auto auction that I went and bought this Honda. Well, after the Honda stopped running, I went to that auto auction. And another friend says to me, he's like, we didn't come here for you to look at the cars and then drive home. He's like, buy one. I bid on one. The next one that came through, and I won the bid. I went to that auto auction to buy one car, and what I'm getting at is I ended up driving 3 cars home. It's so much of the alcoholism in me that I'm still working on. It's good. It's okay. Seeing others come into this program and seeing their lives change is truly the highlight of our lives. If y'all haven't experienced that yet, keep coming to the meetings until you get an opportunity to experience that. Working with an alcoholic that is in early sobriety and seeing their life change it's amazing how God works through us and in us. It truly is amazing. Their lives change in front of you and they become the people that they are within their hearts. And it's amazing. It truly is. See them making decisions that are in their best interest for the sake of their sobriety. And seeing them making decisions that scare the shit out of you at times. But being there for them anyway. Okay, with any more, I'll be rambling, and I don't want to ramble. If nobody's told you that they love you today, I truly do. So keep coming. Keep coming till the miracle happens. And then like a good alcoholic, just keep coming some more. Because it works when we work it. And all those cliches. But I do love you. All of you. Because this is my family. And that reminds me. Getting to share something that was taught to me. I learned it sober. But after learning it, the Army taught me how to rappel. And that was the only time that I was sober doing it. And I was sharing with Carl earlier, in 18 years, I have rappelled at least once each and every year over the past 18 years. But it wasn't until I came into these rooms that I did it sober. The first time I went off that mountain, I was so inebriated that I was so drunk that I didn't wear gloves, and I come down that thing, and as soon as I got off the rope and disconnected from the line, I had blisters swell up on my hand. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I went through that EMT course. I figure if I'm going to screw my life up that much, I better be able to fix the shit that I tear up. I love you, and keep coming back.